Hi, everyone. Welcome to Dean's Chat, where we discuss all things podiatric medicine. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Jensen. I'm the Dean at the Arizona College of Podiatric Medicine and the host for the Dean's Chat podcast. It is an honor and a privilege to introduce Dr. Lawrence Harkless as one of the most influential podiatrists in the history of our profession. He has helped define our profession, and he has led podiatric physicians to the forefront of diabetic foot care worldwide through his teaching, research, and publications. He has also ushered in a new era of education as the founding dean of 2 colleges of podiatric medicine. Dr. Harkless has influenced thousands of students and dozens of residents and fellows, and they are honored to call him their mentor. Welcome to Dean's Chat, Dr. Harkless.
Well, thanks, Jeff. I'm honored to participate and be present and share.
Oh, that's great. You know, Larry, we've been working a while to get this together. So the more I was thinking about it, the more I'm thinking that with your history, we may have to do a 2-part podcast, if that's okay with you.
That's fine. No problem.
I was hoping we could kind of work through your days in San Antonio in this first part of the podcast. And there's a lot to talk about. And I didn't want to feel pressure to get through your whole career in 40 minutes, you know?
Yeah, I understand. I understand.
So how's retirement treating you, Larry?
Oh, it's kind of a challenge. I didn't purge a lot of things over, the last 46 years. And so I'm in the process of trying to do that. And thinking about writing the history, I've written some on the history of UT and all of that myself. I've, done a little bit, but not as much. But I'm still throwing stuff away and trying to get a clear plan of attack on how to do that, because without the plan, you don't know what you need and what you don't need, if that makes sense. And in terms of slides and just everything that, I've accumulated, some people think that it's maybe trash. The young people probably don't want it, but it's still a lot of great teaching information, if you know what I mean, over time.
Yeah,
as relate to that.
I think they want it, Larry. I think there's some hunger for history, right? And you can provide a ton of that. So I'm really excited to have you on the program.
That's fine. No problem. Very good.
So how's Jerry doing? How's the family doing?
Family's doing fine. Let's see, the kids, grandkids, we have 3 in Richmond and 2 in D.C., and we have a new one in D.C., in Richmond, about 15 months old. But everybody's fine. I was in Orlando with them. Let's see, the first week of October, I was there for 3 days. They was there for a week. I had like a little timeshare over there, so I went down and hang out a little bit, and I realized that I can't keep up at 73 almost. So, but everybody's doing well, and my daughter is doing well there in running a private equity firm, et cetera. And she was just actually her group was honored as the Investor of the Year for the NASDAQ, and so she went to a big black tie event that the NASDAQ had in New York probably about 2 weeks ago as it relates to that. So that's a Pivotal Ventures. She works for that, and that's Melinda Gates. And the purpose of it is for women entrepreneurs in finance. They do not exist at the leadership level. And so they invest money to invest in them so that they can go out and do things. And so it's very, very interesting. I call it social entrepreneurship.
There you go.
To change things.
Well, entrepreneurship and collaboration is no stranger to you, Larry. You've been doing it your whole life, right? Can we go back to the beginning? Let's talk about your undergraduate experience, when you found out about podiatric medicine. Do you mind starting to share with some of these stories with us?
Well, basically, I would say it started off where I grew up in Tatum, Texas. That's a small town it was like 542. When I was growing up, I was just recently there for my brother's 75th surprise birthday party last week on the 4th. And the population now is 1342. But I actually grew up in the country on a farm. My dad was a school teacher, football coach. He coached, et cetera. But his entrepreneurship was the farm because of segregation. And so I didn't realize it, but I learned all the lessons between church and the farm. We had spirituality, but I learned that there's a time to plant, grow, harvest, and you can't get out of cycle, regardless of what you're doing in life. There's a season for everything. So I learned that, and then playing sports, I learned how to win and lose. And so I think those are the foundations for life and growth and how to deal with adversity, just all the things that happens. I remember we would plant acres of corn. Dad always had 20, 30 cows. We planted corn and we grew everything we ate. It was all fresh. I think that's why people in the rural live longer lives. And I guess the stress, if that was a drought, things of nature that maybe you had a bad year. But my father used to say, you need to put some things away. When the sun is shining, you need to put some things away because when the rain comes, it may rain too long. And so, just simple agronomy type of learning processes that created a foundation for learning and growth, right? And so I would recently I was on the 15th of July of this year. I was honored. I was put in the Prairie View Interscholastic League Hall of Fame for football in 1966 in the Black League. So back in the day with segregation, we couldn't go to Texas A&M, so they created Prairie View A&M, which is a state-supported institution, HBCU. And they also created, you couldn't go to UT Austin, so they created Texas Southern. And so Prairie View was the Interscholastic League for, high school. So debate, spelling, all the different things you would do in high school for competition, we always went to Prairie View. And because we were rural, then we participated in agriculture, tree judging, land judging, and all of that. So going to Prairie View was like, I guess, going to LA or Broadway or New York for us, in the country back in the day. But growing up, our principal, his name was J.C. Beckworth, he they taught us to be competitive and that everybody put their pants and shoes on the same way. And we didn't know that the playing field wasn't level, but that we could learn. And I think they instilled that in everybody, whether you were the valedictorian or whatever you were. And we got great civics classes and how to be a good citizen in terms of government and all of that. In essence, the Black school that I grew up in it was 7 communities that had a school and a church. And they consolidated in 1947. And Mr. Beckworth, I don't know, he had to be a great leader to get all that to come together. And so they wanted to build a new school. And in 1955, they passed a bond issue for the school for the school. So as it relates to politics, I knew nothing about politics, but however the Black vote went, that's kind of how things happen. And so I used to drive the pickup truck. So I used to drive people to the poll whenever there was an election. And so they knew how to negotiate and get the things that they wanted. So really they passed the bond election and that was a big deal. But that particular night that it passed, there were 2 Anglo guys that went down to Farm Road 782. They shot at my grandmother's house. She was praying and it hit a post and they went 2 miles down the road. There was a deacon, Mr. Bubba Thompson, drove one of the school buses. They shot in the school bus in his house, didn't hit anybody. But they turned left on 149. That's a state highway. It's about 15 miles to Longview. And Longview was the industrial center of Northeast Texas. It's about 55 miles from Shreveport, about 70 miles from Texarkana. And they had all the industry there, Eastman Kodak, Lever Brothers, Schlitz Brewery, Continental Can, all of that. So people would drive 50, 60 miles there, like in Detroit with the UAW and the people working in the auto industry. Yeah. So they, about halfway up, there was a barbecue joint called Grady Green's Barbecue. So they shot in there and they hit this guy named John Earl Reese. He was dancing. At that time, instead of the disco, they had jukeboxes. And so they were in there dancing. And it's the only person on the Civil Rights Museum in Montgomery, Alabama from Texas is John Earl Reese from my hometown, from Tatum. Yeah. So that's just a background of, if you understand that, where I came from. So I went to North Texas State University in the fall of '68. And let's see, I was supposed to be a math major, but the highest, the most complicated math course we took was tree. They didn't offer calculus at the school. And I was in the first class when they integrated the high school in the fall of '67. Okay. So after we had gone to the state championship in the football, they integrated the school the next year in the fall. And so I was the first African-American quarterback at a predominantly white school in that particular area, back then. But because the integration of the schools was so late in the year that we ended up playing in Class B football versus Class A or 2A. But we won the regional championship for the state my senior year in high school as well, right, in that regard. So so I went to North Texas. I clearly wasn't let's see, Darryl Raw was at UT. They ran the wishbone and the option. I was a quarterback that we ran from 5 formations, and I changed plays on the line in high school. They very seldom sent a play there. Matter of fact, when we had the award ceremony back in July, which I was telling you I received the award, they also awarded my split end also, and they awarded my backfield coach and offensive coach, Mr. Maurice Mills, posthumously. But he was my science and chemistry teacher in biology in high school. He was a phenomenal guy. So they asked the wide receiver, his name is Travis Edwards. He's an osteopathic physician, ER in the DFW area now. He was in the first class that the University of North Texas had for osteopathic medicine. So Michigan State had the first state osteopathic medical school in 72, and North Texas opened up probably 73, somewhere in that range. I learned that from Ben Cohen, who was the provost at Western when I went there, and he was a part of he was a dean at University of North Texas. That's how I met him through the SMAC committee on the VA back in 95, 97 back there. Yeah. So they asked the split end, Dr. Edwards, is Harkless worthy? And so I was wondering what he would say. And he said that Harkless is worthy. He said he was the Tom Brady and Joe Montana of his time, and that he was a student of the game. He knew the defenses. He changed plays on the line, and he took advantage of what the defensive gave us on most occasions. And so that just blew me away. I kind of knew that, but I didn't know whether he knew that. So, and he played college football. Ronnie Shanklin played with me, Joe Green, and all those guys. And Joe Green was at North Texas. He was a senior when I was a freshman, so I knew Joe personally as well. And Ronnie Shanklin followed him, and then my homeboy, Travis Edwards, followed Ronnie. So he was a junior college All-American at Kilgore Junior College. You probably remember the Kilgore College Rangerettes, right? Well, he was All-American there. Oh. And then he didn't end up getting drafted. He went up to the Cardinals, I think, but then he didn't end up making the team. But he deserved to be higher in the draft, and I won't get into all of that. But when I got to North Texas, I took college algebra. I actually registered on the last day, and it was like about 16,000 students there. And everybody told me I was on the last day in the afternoon registering, and I would get any class I wanted. And it was interesting that when I got up there, the lady asked me, did I know Berkeley Harkless? And it seemed like somebody that I should know. And I said, Harkless? I said, yeah, I know Berkeley. He's related to me. And so I got every class I wanted. I had no idea who Berkeley was. But he was a famous football player also, and I was a linebacker. And he was from Bay City, Texas, which is not too far from Houston. And I did meet him because I started asking who he was, and some of the older guys on campus knew. And then I met him several times, et cetera. And so his family, some of those roots are from Rush County, where I grew up, that moved kind of down in that Houston area, over time in terms of assimilation, right? So when I took I was struggling in college algebra and not doing well in English, and I don't know whether I was taking a history class, but I was making A's in biology and chemistry. And so we got invited to a social for the fraternities. And so we met these guys, and they were from Omega Psi Phi fraternity. They was the first African-American chapter in a predominantly a white university in the South was at North Texas. Omega Psi Phi was a Phi Gamma chapter. So these guys, it was 23 charter members. They were all on the dean's list. They were leading in the university and all of that. So I decided that I would pledge. And so those were the guys that motivated me and said, well, if you don't, we had a university across town called Texas Women's University. And if we didn't have if you studied till 9:30, instead of going over that 7:30, you make A's, So I started working harder, and then after that, my grades were like a geometric progression in terms of I think the last 4 semesters I was there, I was on the dean's list. etc.
Fantastic.
And so after that year, I told my mom I wanted to go into medicine. And she's told me I need to go see Dr. Willis. And he was an African-American podiatrist in Longview, Texas. And he graduated from the College of Podiatric Medicine with Irv Canet.
Oh my, okay.
They were very good friends. Irv came up to me one time and shared all that with me. And so Dr. Willis had the image that he was one of the best podiatrists in Northeast Texas. And you can imagine in terms of segregation, all the stuff that was going on back then. But I was so impressed because of probably 70% of his patients were Anglo, and they would drive from halfway to Shreveport, Texas County, halfway to Houston, Dallas to come see him. All that big rural area, Tyler, Texas, all of that. It was amazing how busy he was and all of that, right? And so that's why I ended up going to podiatry, because I wanted to be Dr. Willis. And he was from Selma, Alabama, 16 kids, went to Knoxville College, HBCU, and went to Show. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, that was a big, I probably talked too much. But
No, I'm enjoying this, Larry. It's amazing. It kind of illustrates how small our profession is, because Dr. Canet was my residency director back in the day.
No, I remember that. I knew you trained up in Detroit. I do remember that. But I met, Irv early, probably 1980. I went to the first APMA House of Delegates, and that's when they were fighting with the ambulatory guys.
Oh, yes.
And they had a House of Delegates that went to about 1 a.m, and McGlammer was up there railing, saying they were prostituting our principals, and I never forgot that. But the only reason I went was that I didn't understand why we didn't have hospital privileges, so I wanted to go. I gave this speech, and I couldn't believe they elected me to go as an alternate, so I could ask every delegate why we didn't have hospital privileges, and I was able to go and get to see that part, and I've been engaged ever since.
You have. So you didn't have a path to Shoal, though. You went to the California College of Podiatric Medicine.
Well, there were 5 schools back then, and I didn't want to go anywhere where it was cold. And
I don't blame you.
As I'm going to California now, the coldest winters are some in San Francisco. But no. Dr. Willis told me it was probably the best school because of the biomechanics and all of that. And so that's where I didn't want to apply to one. And I went there, and Leonard Levy was my mentor. He interviewed me in 1970 to go to podiatry school, and they wanted me to fly to San Francisco to interview. My mode of transportation was a Continental Trailway bus.
Right.
That's how I got around. Yeah, that's how I went to college and got back and forth, all of that. I had never been on an airplane. So he told me he was coming to the American Public Health Association meeting in Houston, and I borrowed my brother's car. He was on a football scholarship up at the University of Texas at Arlington. And I got his car, and I got a couple of fraternity brothers. So we drove to Houston and interviewed with him like 9 in the morning, drove early in the wee morning from, to Denton, which is just about a 5.5-hour drive there. And that's where I met Leonard. And he's been my mentor and friend for all those years. And he just, recently passed this year, early part about maybe March this year.
Yes. Oh, what a phenomenal mentor for you.
Yeah. He told me, the highest tuition I paid in college was $127.50, and I had 18 hours and 2 or 3 labs. So, and at that time, tuition at CCPM was like $3,000, and then you had to live in San Francisco. And when I got there, I couldn't believe people lived like that. They didn't have no yard. It was all cement. It's like Midnight Cowboy in New York.
No doubt. That's great.
But I learned, and it was a great opportunity. At that time, that was that was the other thing that Dr. Willis told me, that they had their own hospital there also.
Yes.
So you're going to learn more than you would at those other schools. That's what he told me. Yeah. And he was correct on all of that.
Now, was it the Pacific Coast Hospital back in 1970 also? Because that's what it was when I was there.
No, it was called the California Podiatry Hospital.
Oh, okay. Very good.
So they changed the name.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, I worked steady as a student. Well, I worked in clinic supply for Marita and gave the 3rd and 4th year students instruments for the clinic. So I was already nosing and seeing what they were doing, and I knew all of them names. And people think I know everybody, but I was learning that just then. And then I did that, and then I worked in admissions at the hospital on the weekend. Okay. Because of work study. Leonard, he made sure that I had enough to do what I need to do. So I couldn't thank him enough.
Sure. So from an academic perspective, what are your recollections of being at the California College of Podiatric Medicine?
We thought that it was the best school because all the basic science faculty was from UC and the Lang series. So the pharmacology, although Ribeiro was there teaching biochemistry, he would bring all the biochemistry guys from UC there to teach certain aspects of all of that. And so I felt that we were getting a great education overall, and we're prepared quite well. The fact that we had a hospital was the difference in knowing how everything worked within that system, just like it was if it was a regular MD training program like up at Moffitt Open Masters up on the hill there in San Francisco. But the biggest thing that happened to me was the fact that I met these medical students at UC. I was a second-year student, and so I ended up moving in with them like probably halfway through my second year. And so I was always a year ahead of them. They graduated 76 from UCSF, and I graduated 75 from CCPM. But when they were second-year students, they every night about 10 o'clock, 10:30, we had a room downstairs, and there was Robert was there in a waterbed, so we'd go down there and commiserate. And they was having a pharmacology found, and so they were asking me questions, and I was answering them and all of that. And I made an A on a test, but every question one or two questions that I did miss was on some of the old tests that they were going through as they were getting ready for their test. I mean, they had studied and everything, but they were just going through things and all of that. But they taught me that I should be reading about what I was seeing in clinic versus, if you remember, when we were in school, the medicine class they lectured to you, and then you had it wasn't like you saw the patient and read about what you were seeing. See, that was the difference. Yeah. So they told me I need to be reading about what I see in my clinic every day. And I took that to heart. And they also, I remember Gene Washington was one of the roommates, and he is over time had become one of the top guys in medicine. And he was the vice chancellor of UCSF. He was the dean of UCLA from 10 to probably early 16. And then he became the chancellor of the Duke system after that. So, but he was the one that pretty much taught me how to be an academic over time, and et cetera. And when I was in Atlanta doing my surgery year, he was an intern at the public health hospital in Staten Island. But he went to Berkeley between his second and third year. Between his second and third year, and he got this master's in public health. And so, Professor Blum was the chairman of the public health department at Berkeley, and he was kind of Gene's mentor. And I think there was a guy named Petrakis in epidemiology at UCSF. I think he was the one that kind of informed and inspired Gene about considering epidemiology. So that's kind of what he wanted to do. So he did his internship at the public health hospital in Staten Island. But Blum told him that he needs to spend some time at the CDC. So he figured out how he could spend 2 months of his internship at the CDC. So he stayed with me in Atlanta, and I just had a couch, and I didn't even have a bookcase. I made some bricks and made me a bookcase. But so I was learning as much about what he was doing and all of that, and we've just been great friends all my career. And so and then the other two guys, Darrell Houston became one of the top pulmonary guys in LA at Cedars and Centinela and Rothman, those kind of hospitals. And Robert Lowry was one of the top heart surgeons at the Washington Hospital Center. So those were the guys that I've known from early up. And so I think that I was able to see a different picture of medicine, integrating and all of that and what they were doing. And so as I look at the career, I didn't have an idea that I would have ended up here. I barely got a program. I thought if I didn't get any program, I would get the schools program. And I was like the 31st alternate. The only program that I got was the Foot Health Center in Los Angeles, which I thought was a good program. I spent 6 weeks there as a student. And the reason I liked it was because it had a clinic. I really think that if you can go around and do all the surgery, but if you don't have a clinic, man, you can't test and prove for yourself to see what worked, what didn't work. You always rely on what somebody told you versus seeing the patient yourself. Right. And all of that. And Grande and Jay Shukin and Howard Marshall, all those guys were there. And they were passionate teachers and all of that. So I knew I would get a good overall education, but I still kind of felt like I wanted a university of a little more credibility place than that, although I would have learned a lot. And still, I felt like I would have been a good podiatrist. But I ended up, the UT system, the county system was losing they were going to cut the podiatry program because of funding. There was some shortfalls in the budget. And so Bogey decided that he would go to the legislature and get the money for the program if the county didn't have that. And so I got called to come and interview. And I don't know why I hadn't signed the paper for the Foot Health Center. Maybe I probably had another 3 or 4 or 5 days to do that, but I flew down and had an interview. And it was the only interview that I didn't have that was academic. He really wanted to know who I was and where I grew up, with my mom, dad did, and all that. And he told me he wanted me to come, but he didn't know whether we were going to have the money to pay, but blah, blah, blah. But he told me that he would make sure I had somewhere to eat and sleep and all of those things. And so that's how I ended up at UT. And I worked hard and got to see how that worked. We were at Division in Family Medicine. And Sokolov was very, very instrumental in Tilden in the program because when Bogies decided he was trying to have a program, I think he called Levy, and Levy told Sokolov to get involved in all of that. So he came down and attended several meetings and talked about how it should be integrated because, again, they had the hospital, they had the mall, they knew exactly. And he trained over at Highlands in Oakland, which was the county hospital too, where DeVries was and all of that. See, sure. So that solidified that. And, Sokolov can talk with the best of them. Plus, he has such credibility, and all of that. Right. So that's what happened. So I ended up here. And previous residents, let's see, Jerry Patterson was the first resident. I think he was the valedictorian of his class at CCPM in 72. And then Barry Rochfeller followed him. I don't know whether you know who he is, but he did a year here, but he did a second year with Lowell Wow.
Okay.
In Chicago, which was really in the decade of the 70s. That was part of the top surgical program. And as you well know, the history, Wow was a pupil of Kenneth and Earl Kaplan and Weinstock and all those guys.
Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and then the third year, Jim Bouchard, who was from PCPM, was at San Antonio, and then he went to Montgomery for 2 years. And then it was me. So I interviewed at Civic Center in Oakland, at Atlanta Hospital, which was 1 year. Oakland was 1, and then Montgomery was 2. And I got accepted at Civic Center at Atlanta Hospital. So I ended up going to Atlanta Hospital. Steve Abbott was my classmate who was at the VA in Denver for many, many years. You know Steve.
You bet.
And he trained under Ganley for a year. And that was a guy I was very interested in, too, because we used to talk weekly about what he was doing, what he was learning. And so I went and spent while I was in Atlanta, I spent an afternoon in his clinic with Ganley because I drove back to New York with a student that came down to rotate. and we got to Philly early enough. I planned where we could go over there. So we spent the afternoon with Ganley. Yeah. So Albert ended up going to, he was upset that I didn't go to Civic Center with him. But that's where Bob Rutherford was. And Rutherford was a icon in his own right as well. But he had international podiatry on his mind. He was doing stuff in Australia. His wife was Australian. And so he was trying to bring up the surgical aspect of podiatry in Australia. And that was a guy named Dick Bogdan, who was real big in biomechanics at CCPM, was on the faculty for a while. But he went over to spend some time in Australia teaching biomechanics and teaching surgery, and several other pupils from CCPM. I was from the basic Bay Area after he got trained with Gerben and Sokolov and all of them. Moved over, went over to Australia and then over there in New Zealand to teach, if that makes sense. Yeah.
You bet. Larry, let's dive into the San Antonio experience. When I think about you, Larry, I think about collaboration. I think about, you make, you make every situation you're involved in better, and all of your enthusiasm. You talked about Dr. Bogey previously. Can you expand on your relationship with Dr. Bogey? Because he was very influential on you.
Yeah, what Dr. Bogey was, he had the vision about podiatry integrating in the mainstream of medicine. He felt that dearly. That was really from his heart. And Bogey was I would consider an LBJ type politician. And so after he got here, I think it was 54, 55, his cronies from Baylor undergrad were interns at the Robert B. Greene Hospital. And Robert B. Greene was the county judge here back in those days. So they ended up naming the hospital after him. And so he said they told him to come down on Friday, Saturday night, and we'll, you teach us whatever you know about the foot, and we'll teach you some medicine. And so that's how that relationship began. And then in the mid-'60s, when John Conley was governor, he put Bogey on the State Board of Podiatric Medical Examiners for licensure. So Bogey, when the licentiates would take the test, they all wanted residencies. And so this was at the beginning of the medical school. And so Bogey decided that, if they have medical school, they're going to have residence. So he went to the dean to talk to him about having a podiatric medical residency program. And he kind of laughed him out of the office. So Bogey went to the county commissioners. And basically, from Bogey saying that I guess he must have told them that they may not have no residence if they didn't have podiatry. And so that's kind of what happened. But then there wasn't any money. So Bogey was president of the TPMA, the Texas Podiatric Medical Association at that time. And so, and then he had a seminar called Banderas, about 35, 40 miles west of here, out on this dude ranch. That's the cowboy capital of the world. So about 50, 60 podiatrists, you had to have an invitation to come. But it was a meeting he had. So he had a little nest egg that he kept over there. So he used some of that money. And by him being the president of TPMA, he was able to get some money that he probably wouldn't have been able to get. That's kind of how the program started that first year. And then the county did it for 2 years. And then, as I mentioned, when I was coming in, that's when the shortfall was. And so when he went to the legislature, Dr. Terrell was the only African-American podiatrist here. So the only person on appropriations in Austin was G.J. Sutton. And Dr. Bogey did not know him, but he knew Dr. Terrell did. They were contemporaries at Prairie View. They went to college together. And so Dr. Terrell took him over to the Sutton and Sutton mortuary. And so so that's how he went to the legislature. So he asked Bogey how much money did he need. And Bogey told him he needed $25,000. I think it was $12,500 for a residence salary back then. And he ran the funeral home, but he smoked these cigars in the smoke-filled room like Brooklyn. So he said that, Lou said, we don't ask for $100,000. They ain't going to think it's important.
Oh, I like that.
That kind of scared Bogey. But they ended up getting the money and all of that. And so so that was the first program that was in a major medical school in the country, right? And it still is today. When I go do my environmental scan on all of that, I don't think there are any programs that really get their certificate from the university, see. That's the difference. I used to tell the residents, I never felt like I was better than Kern or anybody, but I just told them that I wanted what we had for every podiatrist to be able to experience that at that level. And that's basically what I guess has informed and inspired me pretty much all my career, because I got to see that and understand how it worked. And so the educational piece, so at UT, I had 2 goals: to earn the respect of everybody at the Health Science Center and be treated similarly as a discipline. So I think people, if they don't have a purpose, when the storms and the hurricane and the tornado come, they'll throw the towel in. So I ain't dealing with that no more. I'm going to go do X or Y.
Right.
But I knew exactly why I was there. And there was a whole lot of storms. People threw all kinds of curves. All orthopedics was throwing something at you every day about something.
Sure.
But that so by being purpose driven, then you have that foundation that you can go back to keep building on and to keep working. But the best part was the fact that to do that, I felt like I had to teach anything in the curriculum that any discipline had on the foot and ankle. That's what we need to do if we really going to integrate. The smartest people in our profession, we need to get organized and go to every medical school in the country, have a meeting. And I think the dean should do that. You all should go meet with all these people, and I guarantee you minimum 25, 30% of them going to say, when you going to come? But you may not have money to get paid initially, but you need to go and do it. And all that stuff will a whole different world open up to us for the future. And I think that's where we need to be over time. So that's what was driving me. But I wasn't. I was scared to give a talk. I took every class the medical school had, and to become the best educator I could. They would come film you, and man, they would just beat you up. I thought I was awful. But it's almost like the football part I was telling you. My coach said I could take a snap, do a reverse spin, and hand the ball off in the 4 and 6 hole. I can't. He said, well, let me show you. Now, he acted like he could do it, but he couldn't do it. Let's do that 10 times, Harkless. You can do that. So you do it, and then all of a sudden, you keep this repetition that make you excellent at what you do. See? Yeah. So by doing that and understanding educational resources, I got to know it was probably 10 or 12 faculty and PhDs that was all in education at the Health Science Center. And so as we continue to evolve in residents, each resident had to give a couple of lectures a year, and they would come at FEMIT, and they would go over with them about how to give a lecture and all the science of education. And so Razorman and Suad Hadi, all of them, everybody learned.
Sure.
Everybody. And that was the piece that by having conference weekly, well, let me just say this. The other thing I learned was that every department in a medical school, MD, will have case conference, grand rounds, or a combination of both every week. That's how they hold everybody accountable for one word, learning.
Yep.
And every level of learner is learning. That's UME, undergraduate medical education students, GME, residents, fellows, CME, private practitioners, faculty, retirees. And so that's what they're doing every week. And you can raise a question and everybody know whether they know the answer or not. But if you're about learning, then everybody's learning.
Right.
And the good people are going to tell you, well, I ain't thought about that. But that's where I start to learn or earn orthopedics respect, because anytime he had anything on the foot and ankle, I would go to the grand rounds before we became part of the department. And I would be kind of scared to ask a question or say something, because it'd be 200 orthopods there. They had Fort Sam Houston had a residency program, and Wilford Hall. So San Antonio is called Military City, USA. So it's almost like you had 3 medical schools, the medical UT, Air Force, Army. Yeah. And at 7 o'clock on Monday morning, it'd be 200 orthopods in that room, man. So one time they had it on bunions and stuff, and I don't know what they were doing, but I was like the third row back, and I just couldn't hold my peace. So I asked the question, like, how come you didn't consider doing a McBride Revere, the closing wedge I started in the metatarsal head? And Rockwood and Green Fracture Techs, he's the chairman. He got up. I don't even know how he knew me. He said, well, Dr. Harkless, he trained under McBride in Oklahoma City, man. He said, when I worked with McBride, the sesame was hard to take out. And so we got in this discussion about the sesame. I said, well, if you know how to do it, it's like 4 cuts. And if you know your anatomy, it's easy to take out.
Oh, I love it. I love it. In front of 200 people.
From that day to this day, every time I came, he always asked me what I thought, whether it was tendon, cartilage, bone, or whatever. He always did.
I love it, Larry.
Yeah. So that was the foundation for all of that, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so I used we couldn't operate inpatient. So I invented ambulatory surgery just like most podiatrists did. They were operating in their offices. Right. So when I started in 77, fall of 77, Dr. Douglas, the chairman of family medicine, was the chief of staff of the hospital. So he told me that we could win the battle, but we lose the war, or whatever ortho, but he would get me a room there in the county. So the county had 5 ORs, the old county. And when they moved out to the medical school, they built a new one, and they shut down everything except for OB. And so they were still delivering babies, and I told them, let me use one of those ORs. And so basically, I would do about 5 to 6 cases every Thursday morning, or Thursday all day. And we would do it on the local block. I'd start an IV. I may give them a little 5-10 milligrams of Valium slowly. They were a little anxious. And knock on wood, man, we really never had a problem in all those years, man. Oh, and I had a book to show if they went to the hospital, what it would cost, save money, all of that, just in case, things happen. If we got an infection, it was going to go to ER. The patient knew not to go to the ER. They would call us. So we'd have them to come to the clinic, and we would open it up and drain it and flush it out. And then we put them on antibiotics, and then we would change it 3 times a day or twice a day. Maybe the intern would go in the morning, somebody go at lunchtime, and maybe I would go by and check it and eat it on the way home. And knock on wood, we maybe get 1 infection a year, but we took care of it. Because had it gone to the ER, you can imagine what they would have blown up on us. Sure. They would say, they don't need to be, there ain't no doctors, all that kind of stuff. Sure. Yeah. But the other issue was also that if something came in on the rear foot, which I did know how to do, that you couldn't do there, that you needed, 2-3 hours of, triple or something like that I would send that down to Heckman's clinic, and he was a foot and ankle guy, and he was the deputy chairman or vice chairman of the Department of Orthopedics. And so I had good rapport with him because he knew that I was not trying to do anything that I wasn't trained to do or whatever. And he would let me come over and scrub with him if I sent him something. And then that's when I really saw that, damn, these guys, if they ever see me do something, they're gonna crap in their pants. They're going to see what the hell I'm doing, man. Yeah.
Oh, that's fabulous. Well,
So but let me make one other statement.
Sure.
Atlanta Hospital, I'm getting ahead.
No, that's
but
right.
When I went there, Doug Ellaby had spent 1 year at Northlake with Lowell Wilder Smith, and then Jack Brown came from Kern. And so we were all supposed to be second-year residents. So they treated Elby like a third-year resident. They treated Brown like a second-year resident, and they treated me like a first-year. Maybe I had done 3 or 4 hematomes. That was it. I had done no surgery, man.
Oh my God.
But within about 3 or 4 months, I could do anything they could do just as fast. And I tell students, I said, that's a technical skill. And we would do like 20 cases a day. But let me tell you what I did, though, there in Atlanta. Every third day, you had to do all H&Ps, and it'd probably be 10 or 15 or whatever. So you start early in the morning and work them all up, and you had the first choice on any case that you want to go on, after you spent that day on the floor.
Sure.
But because I was in San Antonio doing medical stuff primarily, I never looked at the surgery schedule. I would call the operator and say, who was admitted today? So I saw every patient that came in the hospital the whole year, as if they walked in my office. So I'd go see them, get the history, examine them and all that. Then I'd look at the surgery schedule. And if it was something different from what I thought, then I could get into a meaningful discussion. And most of the time I had time to go read a little bit. So, and I was never condescending, man, but most people weren't that well read. They were doing good procedures and stuff, but I've always wanted to know why. I'm a why guy.
Yeah, that inquisitive mind never left you, Larry.
It never left. Thank you, Jeff.
No, I love it. So your educational experience for students and residents alike is legendary, Larry. To this day, I talk to our colleagues that remember your 6 a.m. meetings in the morning, get everybody together, let's talk about all the patients and do rounds.
Yeah. Well, that was because I want the key to training residents is that how do you know that they know? And the only way you're going to know that is you have to interact with them. Now, everybody call this outcomes assessment, and that's fine. But you can observe that if you have, there were 7 venues where we tested a resident's knowledge. Charity starts at home, and home was the clinic. In a county hospital, everything that you got taught, gonna walk in. And I'm going to get to find out where you are along your growth. Okay. Now, my father used to use all those farm analogies, but he told me once, he said, son, all the tomatoes don't ripen on the vine at the same time. So a good teacher have to meet each student where they are and give them time to grow.
Wow, I love that.
And it's all really about that. And so I ended up spending more time on the weaker residents than I did on the smarter ones. And a lot of them probably get upset, well, we need to be doing that. People are, when you look at time and all that, there's a lot of competing priorities for all of that. But there's no better feeling than giving people confidence of where they are and giving them time to grow, because once they get comfortable with who they are and whose they are and why they are where they're going, man, they take off and they'll pass some people up on the road if they have it in here and that desire to work and I call it the will to be and do. And so that's different for every person. And that's what you have to really, people talk a good game, but you got to really go back and find out really what's there. And that's where you got to listen what the residents say about the people that come and rotate. It depends on what you're looking for, see. And the other issue is you need a team of people that'll want to work together, because God don't give us all the same talents and skills, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, it's very true.
So you're going to need a guy with Armstrong's talent. You're going to need a guy with Laver's talent. You're going to need a guy, I'm the educator guy. But it's like you were as successful as I've been in the entrepreneur world and things that you were doing in business. And so I used to tell the students when they would come that I don't understand why you want to go work for somebody else. I said, in America, it's really all about capitalism. So why you want to work for somebody else? I said, you should work for yourself. And so I said, now you got this university here, and you went to college with people that are lawyers, some are accountants, some people went into HR. And, I put the business piece together of all the infrastructure you need in the top 4 or 5 people. And so why don't you go out and set up your own business and compete with Kaiser and everybody else? Because that's what this is really all about. Now, you can go get a job and make a nice little salary, but the opportunity in America is all owning a business and doing all of those things. And you're here where you have every discipline in medicine. So you're going to meet pharmacists, you're going to meet this person, the DO, the optometrist, the dentist. Go and compete. You already got it right there. Now everybody don't have the skills to be the leader, but some people do. And if they lead and everybody's fair, everybody going to be better and you're going to be an owner in it. Why don't you be an owner versus working for somebody, telling you when to come and go?
Oh, I'm with you.
Yeah, that's just a whole big picture. But today, everything has changed, Jeff, from when we came out and when we started. It's a whole different world now, man.
It has, Larry.
And I'm sure you're experiencing that.
I kind of bridged both, similar to you. But, Larry, we haven't even touched on 130 publications you were part of in the research at San Antonio. So let me ask you this. I have a whole list of your students and residents that have really become leaders in the profession, and I want to ask you about each of those and comment. But what I thought we would do is do that on the next episode, Larry. Is that okay?
Oh, that's fine. That's not a problem.
Because we've already gone for about 45 minutes, and my 2-part series with Dr. Harkless, who knows, it might turn into 3,
Okay, yeah, whatever. But that's kind of the early part of that. Atlanta Hospital, quickly. So I went there let me say this about it. When I came here, the clinic met all day, half day on Mondays and Wednesdays, I believe. But by the time I left, the clinic met all day, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We were seeing about 40 patients a day. That's just what I did as a little intern, just trying to see all the people. And Dr. Bowie mentioned that I should have lunch with a different person every day. And so I met, pediatricians. I want to learn how to look in the eyes. So one day I ate lunch with an ophthalmology guy. He said, well, I get down there like about 6:30 in the morning. He said, come on down, I'll teach you how to look in the eye. So I'd meet him down there. By the time I left here after a year, I was damn good looking in the eye. So,
I love it.
But I was learning and I wasn't scared, and I wasn't scared to admit what I didn't know.
Right.
And that's how I learned that from the medical students in California. Because I never forgot a guy named Schlesinger he wrote the textbook of gastroenterology. And this is the guy that ended up at UCSF and Duke and UCLA. But he was a second-year student, and he was presenting to him on something called multiple myeloma. And he said he had gotten started about halfway through the history of the present illness, and he stopped him and he said, well, Dr. Washington, what does multiple myeloma mean to you? And he said, it's a disease of the plasma cells of the bone marrow. He said, what are plasma cells? He said, plasma cells make antibodies. And man, he kept asking him questions. He went all down into the alpha beta chains, like hemoglobin. Then he stopped and went on, and then he taught a little bit and went on. So just through that, I believe I have yet to have a patient that won't change their behavior if you explain what's going on at the cellular level. And very few doctors do that. And I, again, want to know why that was always a challenge.
Absolutely. So, Larry, let's do this. When we start our next episode, I'm going to talk about some of the awards you've won for education, and then we're going to talk about some of the doctors that you've mentored. And then what we'll do is we'll start talking about your educational experience of founding 2 of our colleges of podiatric medicine. How's that sound?
That sounds good. Sounds good.
All right. Well, I appreciate you carving out some time today, Larry. We'll get another episode on the schedule. And, Larry, people watch these on YouTube. And if you're watching on YouTube, please be a subscriber. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please give us a 5-star rating. But Larry, what I'm going to do, and you're going to get this before our next episode, I'm going to send you one of these Dean's Chat cups. And that'll keep us going for these long discussions, because I'm thoroughly enjoying your history of San Antonio and your background. It's like I said, it's an honor and a privilege to interview you, Larry.
Yeah, no problem. The big thing, and I may have said this to you, is that I still believe that we need the National Academy of Medicine to study us, to tell us who we are. And we can't be scared at this point, worrying about what they go say, what the outcome is, because from where we started and where we are now, I mean, that's amazing.
It's unbelievable.
We earned that. But I'll leave it at that. We'll get into that.
We'll get into it next episode. Larry, I'll give you a call and we'll get it scheduled. How's that sound?
Sounds good. Okay.
All right, sounds good. Cheers now. Okay, bye-bye, everybody.